Perfect. So hello everyone and welcome to today's EAUC webinar. The title of this webinar is Taking Fairtrade Further, the Case of the University of Edinburgh, and it will last approximately an hour. It is in the Procurement and Supplier Engagement Framework with the live framework, and in terms of competency level, it is starting out and or on the road. Thank you for registering, and thanks also to today's speaker, Liz Cooper from the University of Edinburgh. My name's Emma and I'm the Member Events and Communities Officer here at EAUC. If you have any specific event, webinar or training requests, I will be happy to talk to you at any time. I also work with our community groups, so as a member of the EAUC, I encourage you to join one of our communities of practice or regional groups. More information about these and how to join can be found in the member zone on our website. You may have previously attended or heard of exchange webinars. These are continuing, but due to their popularity, we have developed a new range of EAUC webinars. These are for EAUC members only and are an additional benefit to your membership. They are more detailed with clear learning outcomes, expert speakers, and will allow for more complex topics. They will all last between 1 and 1.5 hours, depending on the specific topic. Shortly after the webinar has finished, you will receive a certificate of attendance to place on your personal development file as a record of training. So we've just got a little bit of housekeeping to go over now. I'm hoping that everybody can hear me well. I have muted you all to avoid background noise, and you will continue to be muted throughout the webinar. If you're having any technical issues at all throughout the webinar, please let me know either by posting in the on-screen chat box or sending me an email to easton@eauc.org.uk. Hopefully most of you have working microphones. Don't worry if not, as you will still have the opportunity to ask any questions at the end. The webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded as a resource with all presentations later on today. Please feel free to share these resources with any colleagues or fellow EAUC members. Once the webinar has finished, you'll be sent a short survey for us to gain your feedback. Please take a few minutes out of your time to complete the survey, as the results will help us to improve our CPD and events. So that's all from me for now. Thanks again for registering, and now I'll now pass you over to our speaker, Liz Cooper.
Hello everybody, and thanks for coming. I hope this will be of some interest and some use, and I also hope that we'll have some good discussion at the end of it. But for now, I'm just going to do my presentation on what we're doing about fair trade at the University of Edinburgh and why we want to take this issue further, and we don't see it as something that's done, that we really need to do more. So I'm a research and policy manager in our social responsibility and sustainability department at the university, and I focus on fair trade as well as a few other social responsibility issues. So I hope you can all see these slides. I'm now going to go through them. So to start off, I'm going to show you a short video. It's only 2 minutes long that a colleague has just made on fair trade at our institution. You'll also be able to see my face nice and big in there, so you can see who's talking to you. So I'll just play this video first. So hopefully that gave you a little bit of a taster of what we've been working on over the years at this institution. So this presentation, as you can see on the slide, will cover why Fairtrade, our experience of being a Fairtrade university, why take Fairtrade further, results from a consultation we did this semester on what should we be doing next about Fairtrade, and what we are already doing to take Fairtrade further, and then some discussion. So just briefly, why Fairtrade? Fairtrade is about improving working and trading conditions for disadvantaged producers in developing countries, primarily. And the criteria for Fairtrade labels, you've got the Fairtrade one here, and you've got World Fairtrade Organisation, which is another approach to Fairtrade. Similar criteria, which include fair price or pay to workers, decent working conditions, long-term trading relationships, and capacity building. There's a lot of other things involved, but I don't really need to go into that too much today, as you can find out a lot more on the internet if you're not already an expert on this. So, Edinburgh as a Fairtrade university, we became a Fairtrade university, which is a Fairtrade Foundation scheme, in 2004, following a student vote in 2003. So this is really the students that pushed this. Students wanted us to support Fairtrade and to work on Fairtrade. The status is jointly held by the university and our student association, EAUC, Edinburgh University Students Association. We submit a report to the Fairtrade Foundation every 2 years on our progress, and in which we make commitments to doing more each time. And we have a website within the university website on Fairtrade, which has a guide to Fairtrade, what it is, and what you can do about it. Lots of information on our approach and all of our news and events to do with Fairtrade. So what has being a Fairtrade university meant for us? These are basically based on the points and goals of being a Fairtrade university or college. So it has meant the procurement of Fairtrade and other Fairtrade projects. Note that Fairtrade, one word, is just one approach to Fairtrade by the Fairtrade Foundation and Fairtrade International, the most recognised logo, but there are other labelling schemes and other approaches to fair trade, and also small firms and businesses that don't want to, organisations that don't want to apply for labelling for various reasons. So we have other fair trade products. We've got our tea, our coffee, our hot chocolate. We've got rice from Malawi, which is fair trade. In our catering outlets, juice, snacks, and some cotton. We have a fair trade policy, which, note again, we've broadened that to become a fair trade 2 words policy, because we're looking at this from broader context than just the fair trade international one labelling approach. Although we're still supporting and selling their products, but we wanted our policy to be about fairness in trade in a broader way. The same thing with our fair trade steering group, which brings together staff and students. We've also separated that into 2 words, fair trade steering group. And we've been holding, as part of being a Fairtrade university, a lot of awareness-raising events and different activities organised either by staff, by the Students Association, staff and practical officers, or by student volunteers who've been really active, either through society or through just volunteering for the university to do something about fair trade. So we have a fair trade strategy and implementation plan, which has been divided within the Fairtrade steering group. Just to sort of keep track of what we're doing and plan what we want to be doing about Fairtrade across the university. This is all available online, and all the minutes from our Fairtrade steering group meetings are as well. So if you're interested in reading our strategy documents, plans, and progress reports, you can find all of this on our Fairtrade website. So this year marks 10 years of being a Fairtrade university. So Fairtrade Fortnight, which we use as a time when people want something going on about fair trade, it's a good time to raise awareness, which is the last week of February, first week of March each year. This year we had student volunteers organising an exhibition on fair trade, which was hosted in different places around the university, mostly photographs and also some other creative endeavours that students submitted to a competition, and then a selected ones were printed out. And student volunteers handled all of this themselves, and it was really good to getting people talking about fair trade and what it means to different people. We had a public lecture, Does Fair Trade Make a Difference? By Paul Chandler, with tons of use of MSD, that's a member of the Scottish Parliament, who's also quite interested in fair trade, so that was a good evening event with lots of discussions that we had. Academics have organised events on Fairtrade, so we had an event seminar on conflict minerals and fair phones from politics and international relations. Student volunteers again organised a bike-powered film screening of a Fairtrade film, so that was fun. Fairtrade wine producers came to talk at the Student Association with some wine tastings to get more people along and interested in hearing about Fairtrade. Ethics Forum, again, an academic seminar on Fairtrade and food security, and student volunteers have been writing out articles about all of these events and about other issues in Fairtrade for our website. So it's quite a well-rounded approach with different parts of the university being involved in talking about Fairtrade, basically. So why take Fairtrade further than this? Being a Fairtrade university has brought about positive change for supply chain workers through the things we choose to buy over less fair supply chains, and in terms of the awareness raised among students, staff, and the wider community. But there's so much more to do as institutions and individuals about the effects of what we choose to consume on people and workers around the world. There's so many sectors not covered, products not covered. There's only small percentages of things that are actually being sold as fair trade in one way or another. So there's really a lot more that we can do to improve working conditions around the world, whether we call that fair trade or whether we call it something else. We're working towards the same goal. So we want to go beyond the fair trade university criteria or goals to have much wider impact. And we note that among practitioners, among NGO workers, among consumers, academics, there's a lot of debate going on about fair trade and is it the right approach, or are certain elements of it being watered down, or what should we be doing, what's the best way to improve livelihoods around the world. So we want to be involved in these debates, and we want to be at the forefront of social responsibility as an institution. So we decided over this academic year, mostly this semester, at any event to do with fair trade, so the ones I mentioned that we had in Fairtrade Fortnight and a few before and after that, we wanted to ask people attending these events, what should we be doing next? What next for fair trade at the university and beyond? We got people to write their responses on triangles of coloured card, as you can see in the image there, to be made into bunting, so something visual that can showcase everybody's ideas on fair trade and what next. We had 134 responses from students, staff and external people who were attending events. This doesn't claim to be scientific representative of views across the university community, but it's been really useful just to gather thoughts from those who are interested or those who have attended events. So I'm just going to present the key findings of this consultation on what next for fair trade, as it may be useful for some of your institutions to think about some of these things, or you may just think, wow, we're doing all that already, so we're doing really well. We are doing a lot of these things already at Edinburgh, but not all of them, and some of them we're not doing well enough. So the key point, the first point that came up with the most people making this point is that we need to raise awareness more on what fair trade is and how it benefits people and what we're doing about it at the university, because it's a big institution and that is one of our challenges, to get these messages across. There's lots of different sort of activities going around the university and different departments trying to get their messages across. So there are still a lot of students here and staff who don't know that we're doing anything about fair trade, so that's a challenge. People have asked for guidance on where to buy fair trade products, and we do actually have some of that on the website. There's been suggestions that there should be fair trade student societies, so that's something students take up if they wish to or not. We're not going to tell them what societies they should have. We do have a fair trade cafe student society, they prepare food, and other societies do hold events to do with fair trade every now and then, but we don't have a specific society acting on fair trade all the time. People and planners are obviously quite involved in these issues. Also comments that communications about fair trade and what we're doing should come from the student association and student society to have the student voice more. There are ongoing requests for better labelling and signage where we are selling fair trade products. It's not always as prominent as it could be, so we'll be working on that. And expanding fair trade activities to other campuses, because we have a central area here in Edinburgh where we are based, so we do tend to have more activities going on there, but there's other buildings out sort of further out in the suburbs of Edinburgh that we can hold activities at and get messages across there too. Wider range of products need to be available. People are asking for, they're saying, right, you've got your tea and your coffee, you've got some cotton, you've got a few things, but they want everything to be either locally sourced or fair, ethical in some way. There's been requests for more fair trade clothing. We are working on developing more clothing from fair trade cotton. And fair trade in the IT sector was requested, which is something that we are also now beginning to work on jointly with a new initiative called Electronics Watch, which I'll mention later. There are doubts about whether fair trade or fair trade, one word, can really tackle global poverty. Is it the right approach? Should we be focusing more on lobbying governments and business for bigger scale change in the structures and calls for putting pressure on companies like closing their unfair trade practices? I mean, student activists are doing this to some extent, and I just think it's really good to have these discussions, to not say fair trade, we've got the answer, this is perfect, we're solving the world's problems. We don't want to put that message across. We want students to have to get involved in this debate, so it's very good to have these points coming up. There are concerns about the fair trade, the one word fair trade international label approach diluting the original fair trade principles. There's a lot of discussion about whether kickbacks and Nestle should have a fair trade label and corporate involvement, so that's again an ongoing debate. And there were several people suggesting that there should be different fair trade standards, gold, silver and bronze, for sort of how fair are we actually being. So that's an interesting one. Several people were saying we really should incorporate fair trade into courses more, including online, potentially MOOCs and online learning. Need better connections between ethical trade initiatives, so buying local, organic, fair trade, all of these things could be linked up better so people can understand their buying choices a bit better. Link with fair trade projects in developing countries, very interesting point. Develop research on making trade fairer, which is something we are doing, which I'm going to get to. And linking with other universities and colleges on fair trade. So obviously through the EAUC, we are now beginning to do that, which is really good. We've discussed these results in our fair trade steering group. We've identified gaps in what we're currently doing and made an action plan. So that, I think, was a useful exercise and really good to get people's views. So what are we doing to take fair trade further? I'm going to go through 5 points on the next slide. The first one is academic input into our approach and into what fair trade is. The second one is student research, which is again academic input, but specifically from students, in particular postgraduates. Other codes and standards. It's interesting because different people have different ways of defining fair trade. Trade as fair, fairness in trade could be used as a blanket term to cover all sorts of codes and standards about making trade fairer that may not describe themselves as fair trade. So it depends how far you want to go using this term. Is it fair trade? Is it ethical trade? Strengthening wider linkages in society on fair trade. And the last point I'm going to talk about is embedding fair trade in our new social responsibility and sustainability department, which I'm now working. So firstly, academic input. We've established a fair trade academic network in 2012. So through that, we've had seminar series with different academics and practitioners talking about fair trade from different perspectives. You can find the details of these events on the Fair Trade Academic Network website. We've got a website with different content and sort of research papers and details of teaching and research interests on fair trade at this institution. We have a blog, which is actually within the Just World Institute, which the Fair Trade Academic Network is linked to. So it's an academic blog, and we post on there and write things about relevant issues to do with fairness and trade. So you may be interested in reading some academic perspectives on fair trade on there. And we are working on proposals for research grants to really dig into what fair trade is and specific issues and different approaches. So that's a long-term thing, but it's something that's quite exciting, and hopefully we'll get something going with that fairly soon. It's an interdisciplinary network, so we're bringing together people from political theory, political economy, international development, law, geography, business, which are all obviously relevant to what fair trade is. It's about trade, it's about livelihoods, people's lives, economics. We're exploring other ways to consult the academic community on arising ethical issues to help inform university policy and practice. So the idea is something like Fairtrade, we get research projects going, we get recommendations out of these research projects, knowledge exchange and impact activities with different practitioners and also with our procurement department. So advice and recommendations are able to inform what we're doing as a university on procuring and unfairness in trade and what our policies should be. So we are a university, we have all of this knowledge and these research skills. We want to use that to inform what our approach is to trading and being involved in trade. We are linking with academics interested in fair trade beyond Edinburgh and other UK institutions and with civil society organisations and policymakers, which in order to make research that we're doing actually useful and have some sort of impact, we're liaising at various stages along the way with different actors, which is quite exciting. And we're also highlighting other issues that are linked to fair trade in some way that people may not see them as linked to fair trade. So when things come up in policy changes or in different codes and standards, for example, prison labour recently came up as an issue. Even at the EAUC conference last year, there was a company that used prison labour in a rehabilitation sort of way, and also came up in the Worker Rights Consortium Code of Conduct for Garments produced for universities to which we sign up. And they started to ban prison labour. So I started to dig into this issue, and it ended up with several of us going to visit a prison in Scotland a few weeks ago to look at what actually goes on in terms of prisoners working. So there's also a firm in Scotland that we've met at the Scottish Parliament who work with Fairtrade shea butter from Ghana, but they get ex-offenders and potentially now even they release prisoners from Scottish Prison Service to actually make it into soap. So there seems to be a link going on. Can fair trade and prison labour as rehabilitation go together or not? It's quite controversial, but it's interesting. So that's something we want to dig into these issues and really get academics thinking about them and advising on what could we be doing there. Should we be banning? Should we be actually engaging in rehabilitation of prisoners? So yeah, very interesting issues can come up through this whole fair trade academic network. Student research as well. So we're working on organising student placements for MSc students to investigate all sorts of fair trade issues, including potentially for next year to visit and carry out research on our suppliers, supply chains networks overseas. So that I think will be providing very interesting opportunities for students, but also they will be able to come back and make recommendations on what our suppliers are doing and what potentially policy decisions we could be making at the university about our suppliers in terms of ethical issues and fairness in our supply chains. We also have a fair trade dissertation prize through the Fairtrade Academic Network, launched this year. There's a poster for it there. So we'll see how many entries we get for that at the end of this summer and what comes out of it, but hopefully we'll get some interesting dissertation research that we can also share on our website. Number 3, strengthening wider linkages. Being in Scotland, we work closely with the Scottish Fairtrade Forum, which is a group that has been working on a campaign to get Scotland to be a fair trade nation. We are the second one now after Wales. So Scottish Fairtrade Forum are still working a lot on what this means now that we are a fair trade nation in terms of public procurement and improving how much procurement of fair trade products there is across local authorities, for example, universities. So we work closely with them. There's a cross-party group on fair trade at the Scottish Parliament, which several of us attend sometimes to hear different speakers, get involved in what discussions are going on there. It's really interesting. Edinburgh Fair Trade City Group, I'm sure various people among you are also linked to fair trade towns and fair trade city networks linking to your institutions. So just discussing sort of events citywide and linkages with other institutions in Edinburgh in that group. We started to develop European Union level linkages because in terms of procurement policy on fair trade, we're in touch now with the Fair Trade Advocacy Office in Brussels, who are campaigning for policy to support fair trade at the EU level. So that's something we've just been to get involved in, which is interesting. We'll see where we can take that. We're obviously sharing and collaborating with other institutions, further in higher education through the EAUC, with the community of practice that we have. I'm hoping we can take that further, and we'll discuss that a little bit later. And also building external academic networks. So we're very interested, if any of you are able to give us any contact or know of anybody who is researching on something to do with fair trade, we're very interested in getting in touch and linking up. Other codes and standards. So as I was saying earlier, it depends how you define fair trade, fairness in trade, trade is fair, rather than just one labelling approach. Particularly from an academic angle, we're looking at it in a broader way. So things like the Worker Rights Consortium, which I mentioned earlier for University Garments, we signed up to that in 2012. And Electronics Watch, we signed up this year. We just signed up as the first university founding member. So this is about workers' rights in the electronics industry. For us, we discuss these things at our Fair Trade Steering Group and under the banner of making trade fairer. You may disagree on whether we should be using the term fair trade in such a broad way, but I think it's really interesting. And also the APUC, Scottish Procurement Consortium, are working on a code of conduct, and we've been inputting into that. So looking at ethics wider than garments and electronics. I'm not going to talk much about this because there was a webinar on socially responsible public procurement, and the EAUC webinar on the 2nd of April. A colleague of mine spoke at this, as did James Central from Business Planet on Electronics Watch. And I put the link in there so you can actually view that if you haven't already or if you didn't attend it, to see more detail about socially responsible public procurement. So all of this means that we're developing linkages with public procurement consortia, NGOs, civil society organisations, researchers, policy advisors and makers, and we just want to be part of a conversation, which I think we should be as a university, which is about knowledge and learning and teaching and research. And now just finally onto our new Social Responsibility and Sustainability Department, SRS. It's quite a long name, which I try to say quite quickly when I answer the phone. So previously I was working on fair trade across procurement and then across social and political science with academics. But I'm now in this new department and we are embedding fair trade as a key theme across the department. So rather than just having one person focusing on it, it's becoming a theme among others to do with sustainability and social responsibility. We're really fortunate to have the buy-in from the university on these issues and to have resources and our whole department with the new directors to actually take these issues further. So we'll be working closely with academics, with procurement, with different departments around the university and with students to drive these issues forward. So the SRS department is also working on sorts of issues, socially responsible investment, which we see at the moment, and a lot of student campaigning and pressure on divesting from fossil fuels. We've had a consultation on this, and we're currently about to look through all of the results and the suggestions on what we should be doing about investment. Colleagues are working on energy, waste and recycling, travel, well-being and health. You can find out lots more about all these issues that we're working on alongside fair trade at the web link that I've put there. And at the department, we work through a lot of different methods of working with people. So we have face-to-face engagement with a team of colleagues that really go around talking to students and staff in particular about social responsibility and sustainability issues. We have practice networks across the university, bringing people together with interests on these different themes, communications campaigns. We have award schemes for both students and staff awards on what you're doing about social responsibility and sustainability. We have programs of events and volunteer and placement opportunities for students. So volunteering on practical projects, short-term things, and then placements tend to be longer-term research-focused opportunities in our department. So we position ourselves as sort of internal consultancy or advice for other parts of the university. So exciting times, there's a lot to do, a lot to be done on all these different issues. So I'm not sure how many of you in this webinar are in the EAUC Fairtrade community of practice, which I set up after the EAUC conference last year. But I'd also like to talk a little bit later after we've had a bit of general discussion about what next for the EAUC Fairtrade community of practice. So what we've done so far is shared information through a mailing list. People are asking questions about Fairtrade if it's got something they want advice on, or just sharing what each other's doing. We had a survey to find out what people are doing or what they want to be doing or what the challenges are last year when we set up the network. And we plan to have a face-to-face meeting at this year's conference. But what more can we be doing to work together better as institutions? So having told you all about everything we're doing, I would really like to hear what you're doing, and you may be doing lots more than we are, or you may have found something interesting that you'd like to pick up on what we're doing and you have questions. But I have a few suggestions on what we may want to do through this community of practice and to take it further. So sharing experiences of Fairtrade procurement, for example, through in-depth case studies on what we're doing and how and what the challenges are. I think we're sharing at not very in-depth level at the moment, so we could actually do some case studies that might be useful. Could we potentially be jointly defining the next steps for Fairtrade institutions? Because I feel like there are quite a few universities and colleges and universities that have had Fairtrade status for a while but want to be doing something more. Perhaps we could be thinking about what our common goals should be beyond or adding to Fairtrade university status. Can we develop researcher linkages, including student researchers? So that's something I'm particularly interested in with our Fairtrade academic network, is, as I said, finding out what research is going on in other institutions rather than us all doing things separately and not knowing so much about it. And what about developing linkages with institutions even beyond the UK, perhaps within the EU, who must be doing all sorts of things to do with Fairtrade too, but perhaps not in a structured way, or maybe. So I think that would be interesting too. So that's it from me. I hope you found something of interest in there. What I'd like to do now is hear from you all. We did send some questions around earlier, so I hope this isn't a surprise to you, but it'd be really good if each person could introduce themselves and cover, if you're able to, or pick out the bits that you have something to say about. What is your institution doing about Fairtrade? And especially who are you and what do you do? What's your institution doing about Fairtrade? What opportunities and challenges do you see at your institution about Fairtrade? And what would you like to be doing next about Fairtrade? So, not wanting to pick on people, but maybe I will have to, because that's the only way that this webinar can work. So, Jason Smith at MMU, are you following, and are you able to provide us with a little bit of information on what we're doing?
Yeah, more than happy to. My name is Jason. I work for Manchester Metropolitan University. I have been involved, mainly chairing the Fairtrade Steering Group for the last 4 years. It was originally founded and organised as a Fairtrade status through our catering outlets, probably in around 2007 or 8. And then once the catering department had kind of taken it as far as they could, we started to look as an environment team to see how we could best help it along. Obviously all our tea, coffee, biscuits, that kind of stuff, anything that can be fair trade in our hospitality areas, the rice as you mentioned earlier, although we don't tend to shout about that fact enough. A lot of our fair trade rice behind the scenes that's made with the meals is all fair trade as well. Hospitality menus, wine on there, that kind of stuff. So we've just as an environment team over the last 4 years tried to take it that step further. This is still sort of fair trade as one word. So around accreditation and the policy and everything like that is submitted with the Fairtrade Foundation in mind. So we do events around Fairtrade Fortnight. We've done a lot in 2014, probably more than we ever have done, working with external parties as well. So we've visited a local high school, educated their sixth formers and right down to sort of year 7, which I think is around 11 or 12-year-olds, about fair trade, what it is. We had a bit of an open discussion about where a banana comes from, how much it would cost to make. We also were covered by Newsround when we went and did that, so that was very good, and that actually made an episode of Newsround and made the website, so that was good. So yeah, they're the kinds of things that we do. We've worked with Co-op before as well in Manchester. Obviously they've got a big stead in Manchester, and we've had them along with a wine producer and done some wine tasting. We also had them in for a bit of an open discussion, how they came about, how their fair trade links have been made. And we also introduced a local co-op from across the road, who also obviously their methods and ways of doing that were really useful to see from the bigger side of the big co-ops to the smaller co-ops as well. But as taking it further, I mean, we have quite a lot of procurement methods that obviously we are implementing, workers' rights, that kind of stuff, but we don't necessarily refer to it as fair trade, two separate things. There is just a sustainable procurement element that we're looking at the moment, but my primary role with regards to fair trade is as one word. So yeah. Opportunities and challenges. I mean, we tend to struggle to get students to lead with these things. Once upon a time, they were very active. We had a big people and planet group within the student union for about 2 or 3 years, and unfortunately, as they've left, they haven't really brought any new things along. So we're trying to work with the student union a lot more so we can get students to run their own events. So, I mean, if anybody has any sort of thoughts and feedback as to how the best way is to do that, then we'd love to hear from you. We can't keep them on the steering group. It's been a real challenge for us to keep consistent members of the student body on the steering group, and I mean, although they do engage with the events that we run and they seem to be quite happy with what we're doing, we don't tend to have a student voice on the steering group as much as we'd like, or running their own events, which is a real difficulty for us, to be fair.
I mean, we've had the same struggle with wanting students to run their own events, and they haven't always been doing so. Sometimes you do, and sometimes you don't know about it, for example. But this year, I think it's been more successful with students taking control of things, because we do have students on the Fairtrade steering group through People and Planet who are particularly keen and active. But in terms of organising events, I actually just decided, right, I'm going to set up some volunteer placements through our Student Association volunteer service. And one of them was organise a fair trade event. So a team of people came together. I mean, if you get that in September when the students are keen, and they organised an event, and we provided a little bit of funding for it. So they decided to do bike-powered cinema, and that went really well. And the volunteers then started wanting to come to the fair trade gym, and a couple of them did. So that was my decision for this year, which seemed to work very well. Yeah.
We have tried. I mean, that was a good thing. What we tried to do, this thing that I said about co-op coming and the local co-op and a couple of other things. We ran that event as early as possible into Freshers, sort of just after Freshers Week, like you say, when people are in and they're interested and they want to come along. And yeah, for some reason we just can't seem to keep them at the moment. And we have tried various initiatives, and we are going to hopefully continue to do that. And as I say, we don't have a problem with them kind of attending the events. We get usually sort of 50 or 60 decent group of students every time we run something, especially when it's associated with wine. But generally, I mean, we just can't. It just seems to be a bit of a challenge with MMU students as to keeping them on board. But I mean, we just have to keep trying, and we have some representatives from the student union on our group who are really interested and dead keen, and they have insisted that they will kind of hit the first years hard next year, and hopefully we can jump over that gate and not have a problem.
I think with us we found that student interest has increased with the fact that we are being a bit critical of the sort of one-word approach. Not critical, but we sort of say we want to go much beyond this, and students are very interested in saying, hang on, that's the right approach. So the fact that we're really having the debate has seemed to interest students. I'm sure you are doing too, but I mean, that if we were trying to just say, look, Fairtrade's amazing, then there's a little bit less interest. But when we sort of visit and saying, what do you think, and what should we be doing, that seems to get more interest. Yeah,
I think maybe that's it. Yeah, I mean, we tried to encourage obviously our catering to start using local suppliers and things like that. And I suppose if we made a bigger deal of those things, as I say, it is very much at the moment the one word Fairtrade, which is obviously it is a brand, and we did get into quite a hefty debate at the student thing that we had with the co-op and the co-op across the road, and the whole greenwashing sort of branding thing did come up quite prominently, and there were a few students who kind of were seeing right through this. But yeah, I mean, there is a scope to kind of look at that, and we do have some nutrition students who have their own society that look at these kind of things and working with the community a lot, and we're trying to incorporate them a lot more in our events, and maybe it does need to be that wider discussion rather than just being Fairtrade as one word and living up to that standard.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we're still living up to the Fairtrade University sort of criteria or goals, but we just want to sort of bring it into a wider context. And yeah, so good luck. Maybe someone else will be able to give you some advice as well on that.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Hi, Jason. Sorry, it's Emma from EAUC. I was just wondering whether I could just chip in a little bit there. Something that's happening because we're based at the University of Gloucestershire in Cheltenham, and something that they've been doing is they've actually been engaging students with Fairtrade as a sort of separate word with the sports department, and with the sort of there's obviously sustainability is slightly broader, and they have their transport issues and things like that, but with the actual sports kits and things like that, and the sports teams holding events to raise money for the sort of Fairtrade cotton or what have you, sort of sports kits. I don't know whether that's something that could.
We've done a couple of them actually in the last couple of years. We have a campus that's down in Crewe in Cheshire, where mainly sport prevails, and they've got some pitches down there. So for the last 2 years, we've bought them Fairtrade T-shirts. We've invested in sort of Fairtrade footballs, but it has literally been an hour. So I mean, we could look at doing that a little bit bigger and maybe running a tournament sort of in the Manchester areas and that kind of stuff. It's just we usually, as most people do, we focus on Fairtrade Fortnight. Everything gets a little bit crazy, and to organise such a thing is quite difficult. But we have done it for the last 2 years, and we don't try and stick with the ordinary things either when we have a focus during Fairtrade Fortnight. We've done cotton as well, and we've tried to work with sort of our fashion departments and embroidery departments using cotton and getting people involved on that score. We're just trying to convince them to start buying it more regularly, because obviously it is more expensive sort of per metre than it is for regular cotton. But yeah, I mean, the sport avenue is a very good one, and I think quite a lot could be done on that score, because a lot of the students do seem to love sport, but we've kind of just headed down to Crewe rather than Manchester. So yeah, I mean, that long term that might be a good way to look at it.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Sorry, Liz, back over to you.
Well, I was just going to ask other people on the call if they'd like to also answer the questions and introduce what they're doing, opportunities and challenges, and what next. So, Jill Snook and Laura Parry, I can see you're there as 2 people. I'm not sure where you're from, but would you like to tell us a bit about what you're doing? Hello? Okay, perhaps they are not there, or perhaps they might be.
Hello, can
Gil.
you hear me?
Okay, right, I can hear now.
Liz, can you hear me?
Yes,
Hi.
go ahead.
Yeah, so Laura speaking. Yeah, here at City College Plymouth, we obviously we have our fair trade policy, and myself and my colleague Mark Jones, who's actually also sat here, who's a catering contractor, coordinate fair trade here at this college. The last fair trade report that we submitted to the Fair Trade Foundation, Mark also looked into annual spend with Fairtrade, which I think amounted to about £9,550 in 2012. So we're starting to try to monitor it a little bit more, just to see how we're developing as a college. Here we also, obviously, all of our hospitality, so that's tea, coffee, sugar, etc., is fair trade, and we are also obviously selling fair trade in the canteens, coffee shops, and college shop, which is actually run by one of our departments, and the progression and community studies students actually work in that area. Moving on, we actually sit on the city's Fair Trade Steering Group, and this year it was 10 years Fair Trade Plymouth. So they've obviously been doing quite a lot of campaigns. So again, we're trying to share best practice. They had a mayoral reception, which was attended by businesses from across the city. So our focus is obviously trying to share best practice and trying to work with businesses across the city. Again, fair trade, we're trying to get into the events that we run. So examples of that have been Bike Week and Freshers Week, just to try and continually make sure that the fair trade logo gets out there, and continually talking to both staff and students about the benefits of fair trade. One of the ways we found working with students which works well is actually getting it into the curriculum. So last year and the year before, we've actually managed to get our students from the hospitality department to run the Fair Trade Festival, and actually we found this has been quite a good benefit, because not only is it something that they're doing because of the course, but also students talking to the students seems to have a very positive effect. Moving on from that, we educate the staff through staff induction, and we developed a sustainability DVD which Fairtrade focuses on. So obviously all new staff coming through the college get an introduction to Fairtrade. And that seems to be received fairly well, actually, so that's positive steps. But I think, again, it's about reiterating the focus on Fairtrade and refreshing people's minds continually. Obviously, we do a lot of internal publication, promotion, etc. on our website, intranet, Moodle site. We developed a tutorial lesson, so again for lecturers to have a bit of a helping hand, because quite often we found that they didn't really know what they should be doing. So we're trying to generate resources like that to again assist our teaching staff. Part of our structure also looks at reports, so that's our college annual report, so Fairtrade focuses in that, our quality and diversity annual report, and obviously the sustainability reports. So they all get publicised to quite a huge range of people, both internally and externally. So again, I think we, in terms of it embedded in our structure, we seem to be getting there. But I think there is still a long way to go. Some of the areas that we've also done recently, we've had guest speakers in from countries such as St. Lucia, and that was a speaker funded by Fairtrade Foundation. We had someone from last year from the Dominican Republic, which was again funded by the co-op, and actually that's had a really positive impact on staff and students and visitors by the actual farmers themselves speaking to people directly. Moving on, we entered the Southwest Fairtrade Business Awards and won silver. So I guess actually that helps raise the profile of some of our top management people taking a bit more of an interest in Fairtrade. The awards seem to have quite a good effect on them. We did the EAUC case study this year, and also we're trying to get out and work with other colleges and universities. So recently Mark and myself went to Bixton College and did a presentation on sustainability, which again Fairtrade was focused on in that. So overall, that's a bit of a a quick sort of cover in terms of what we're doing here at the college. We definitely, I think, in terms of moving forward, we've touched on clothing. We'd really like to try and expand on that. So the estates departments did get some Fairtrade polo shirts and jumpers a number of years ago, but since then we haven't bought any more Fairtrade clothing. And part of the problem has been actually finding a supplier that can provide us with a small quantity. We were working with a company called Cool Schools, which I don't know whether anyone else has heard of, but they've done a lot of work with schools, and obviously schools seem to be able to buy a large quantity, but here at our college we just don't have that capacity to buy a large volume. So if anyone's got any ideas on that, that would be interesting to hear. We did buy sports equipment, again, probably about 3 years ago, because we got some funding from the co-op, so we bought footballs, netballs, basketballs, and again, now I'm starting to work with the sports department to try and get them to commit to buying at least a fraction of the equipment that they need to buy, which will be fair trade. So hopefully that's given you a bit of an insight into what we do here at our college.
Yeah, I mean, loads of stuff you're doing sounds really interesting. I just wanted to pick up on the cotton procurement angle, because this is something I'm hearing again and again. And I was at a conference recently in Germany about EU-level procurement of Fairtrade. There was a session on Fairtrade cotton, EU-level procurement. So there's discussions going on there about finding suppliers from other EU countries. There's no reason why we shouldn't, and potentially pooling within the EU, which is something you could do within the UK or EU-wide. So I'm not a procurement specialist, but it's something I'm definitely looking into and talking about with people. So perhaps that's something we should take further. I'm not sure if you're involved in the community practice. I think you are. No? Yeah. So perhaps that's something we can discuss further through the EAUC as well. Thank you. We also have, I'm not sure if I have the name because we have numbers as your name.
We have, sorry, it's Becky from Cranfield University.
Hi there. Hi, it's Becky calling from Cranfield University. Right, in terms of what we're doing about Fairtrade, we're quite new to the programme because we only gained Fairtrade status in September 2013. So far we have rolled out Fairtrade products like coffee, tea, sugar to all catering departments internally on campus, as well as to coffee machines, and making sure this is available to all meetings and events. We need, as we're quite new, we're still looking into gaining Fairtrade clothing as well, so that can be supplied through the Student Association shop, and also for staff uniforms and sports uniforms as well. So that will be our next challenge in the future, trying to gain more, invest in staff and student uniforms, and as well as this, for Fairtrade Fortnight, we've promoted the event we've got 2 student speakers who actually had experience in working with the Fairtrade industry in Dominica. So he gave a speech on how he worked at Fairtrade and how this benefits their local community. This was rolled out to few venues across campus, and we also had this alongside a Fairtrade chocolate fountain. And we also had a Fairtrade wine tasting event with wine provided from the co-op. This is local. Another challenge we have is we haven't got very many links so far of external networks. Our local network is Milton Keynes, but we haven't really established a link with them yet. And also, I don't think there is one in Bedford, but maybe we need to start linking into getting more links and with our local communities and externally as well. So what we'd like to do next at our Fairtrade, we'd like to promote this further, like raising awareness, doing Freshers Weeks as well, and maybe incorporate it into induction programs and tell people where they can buy Fairtrade on campus, and make them aware of benefits of buying Fairtrade as well. So that's about it so far, because we're fairly new to this, so we appreciate advice and going further.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we're running out of time today, but I'm sure you can get plenty of advice from different EAUC members who are a little bit further along with their Fairtrade status. So, yeah, I'm just noting again that cotton procurement, Fairtrade cotton is a common theme on how to take that forward. So, definitely something we should all discuss further, I think, in future. Thank you. I'm conscious of time, so Emma, would you like to now talk a little bit more about the EAUC?
Yeah, hi. Yes, I think this is a great opportunity to talk about our community of practice, Fairtrade community of practice. I believe that most of you are actually involved in it, and therefore when I talk about the Fairtrade Fortnight campaign, you're all aware of it because most of you were highly involved within the campaign as well, and a few articles were featured. The community of practice was, as I said, set up last year after conference. Liz kindly brought it to our attention and then kindly volunteered as convener. It's been doing a great job ever since. Primarily it's a discussion network set up through a GISmail. So discussions can go on, people can ask questions, they can be answered there and then. It's just a great, quick, easy way of receiving sort of answers to any questions. There's also on the Sustainability Exchange, we have a resource bank where you can search in FAIR. We've narrowed it down to FAIR because there are many resources with either Fairtrade or FAIR as the tagline. So if you search FAIR into the Sustainability Exchange, there are quite a few resources now, especially after Fairtrade, that you'll be able to find. I think the Fairtrade community of practice generally as a network is very strong at the moment. There's been a lot of dialogue happening, probably because we have recently had Fairtrade Fortnight. But it definitely seems to be something that is being implemented within many institutions, and it's coming through as quite a priority, which is great to hear. I think now we'll take this opportunity with you guys on the webinar to see if anyone has any further thoughts or what we could do, how we could take the community of practice further. As Liz said, we are planning on meeting. There's a scheduled time in the conference, annual conference. So it'll be on the 7th of May. It's the first day, and it's just before the networking evening sessions, about 5 p.m. I believe. But more information about this will be posted out on the Fairtrade network. And this will be the first opportunity for people to meet face to face in the Fairtrade community practice. It's also a little bit light-hearted. The bar will be there for anyone who's interested in that. So it would be a great opportunity. But yeah, I mean, if anyone has any discussion now about how they would like to take the Fairtrade community practice, that would be great. Liz, do you have any thoughts carrying on from today even?
Well, I obviously put a few questions here already on the slide, but I can see what's coming out, as I said, is cotton, how to take Fairtrade cotton. So that's, I think, something we could potentially try and share case studies on of those who are managing to do it well, perhaps, and others can learn from that. I think that could be interesting.
Because with regards to cotton, I mean, we've tried to, as I say, try and go through our fashion areas and everything like that. And even when they're buying it on bulk, they're saying that it's quite expensive. The amount of suppliers that they have on their list that actually stock Fairtrade cotton is not as high as they would like it to be. We've used a few suppliers just for buying odd parts. Obviously, I think the student union buy a lot of hoodies and T-shirts and things that they sell to students, but what we were trying to do is more embed it into the curriculum and encourage the students that are doing embroidery and doing fashion and that kind of stuff to use it. We've even looked into our own budget as to whether we can subsidise a department and sort of help along that to try and, if money is the single issue, whether we can sort of subsidise a portion of that cost just to try and implement it and try and raise the profile from that point of view. So that is something that we're looking at. I mean, as I say, the thing is that we've been over to speak to people about it, even when I've been trying to source occasional T-shirts, aprons even we've tried to source, and they just don't seem to have a real idea of who the suppliers are, and I've done a little bit of digging myself and managed to find them, but it just doesn't seem that it's high on their agenda at the moment, mainly because every time we have approached them, they've just gone, no, it's too expensive to buy in comparison to regular cotton. So I mean, they're the challenges that we've found so far with regards to cotton.
Yeah, but I do think it's possible in the long run, but we just need to keep sharing, you know, best practice on it with each other. I mean,
yeah.
Again, EU level, in France, there's a lot of public procurement of Fairtrade cotton, so all of the postal service uniforms are cotton, for example, and they were saying that it was 10 to 12% more expensive overall. So it depends what suppliers you're going with and how you go about it. So definitely something to discuss further, I think.
Super. But I mean, I plan to attend the conference, and I'm looking forward to meeting everybody with regards to Fairtrade on the 7th. So hopefully a few people are also able to attend.
Yeah, well, I'll be there. So yeah, sounds good. Emma, I think we're running out of time, aren't we?
Yes, we are actually. I think we better round it up there. I think these conversations could go on for quite a while. There's lots to talk about regarding fair trade within institutions, which can either continue on the GISMail, on the Fair Trade Community of Practice GISMail, or we can wait and have a proper discussion about these at the conference, which would be lovely. And I'm looking forward to. I'll be there myself, so I'm looking forward to meeting everyone there as well. But yeah, I think we better round up today's webinar. Thanks again, Liz, for presenting, for being our speaker, and thank you again to everyone for participating and sort of unmuting yourself and being willing to speak. I know it's not the easiest thing. But yes, thank you very much. I will be uploading this as a recorded webinar later on today, and I'll send you all a link with the presentation and any other resources. Brilliant. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.